Evelyn dies in an unhappy marriage and discovers her child isn't her husband's. She goes back in time, escapes him, and meets Aiden, the kind man who turns out to be the real father of her child. Together, they protect the child and build a new life full of love. A voice says they want Haineal? And both of them at that. Lutz says I've cherished Princess Haineal for as long as I can remember. I humbly ask for your majesty's blessing to take her as my bride. So, I am to take my pick amongst the 5 princesses then? If that's the case, then I want her. The girls are murmuring. You mean to say that both the esteemed Lord Chater and Prince Lutz have their sights set on Princess Haineal? Indeed, the Count has been smitten with Her Highness for quite some time now. His reputation as a hopeless romantic precedes him. But after our nation's disastrous attempt to invade the Empire of Traikas, the king promised one of the princesses as a peace offering, along with war reparations. To whom will His Majesty grant Princess Haineal, they wonder? Haineal thinks I already know the answer to that question. After all, I've lived through this before. Dia says, are you all right, Your Highness? The princess replies, I'm fine, Dia. Dia says, how could they think to send a heavily pregnant lady on this harrowing journey? It's beyond all reason. Haineal says it's all right, truly. I had no desire to give birth in that house anyway. Dia says, certainly not, Your Highness. How could one possibly bear a child in a home where her husband brazenly consorts with his mistress? As if all the gossip about your lineage weren't enough already, and still he insists on cavorting with Isabel, that sly fox, while his own wife is carrying his child. Haineal says, oh, come now, Dia. Despite everything, I am still grateful for this child. With this little one, all a man says I must ask you both to step out. Dia says, what? You can't expect us to venture out in this snowstorm. The man says the carriage needs repairing. You stay here. Haineal says, why must Dia stay behind? The man says, come with us, Your Highness. The princess shouts, unhand me. Have you forgotten that I carry your master's child? He says, I can assure you I haven't. Chater says, which is why I so hoped it wouldn't come to this. The princess says, my dear. What are you doing here? He says, Isabel insists on taking her place as my lawful wife, and so I have no choice. Haineal says, what on earth are you doing? This is your child I bear. Chater says, I'm afraid you and that child must go, Haineal. Then Chater pushes her off the hill, and she falls down. She cries and says, my child, my child. Dia says, oh dear, Your Highness, did you have a nightmare? With the Prince of Traikas here to collect the Empire's dues, the entire court must be feeling on edge. It's no wonder your sleep has suffered for it. Haineal says, what are you saying, Dia? Prince Lutz has come to Sal again? Dia says again, Your Highness? But isn't this his first visit? Dia says, as I recall, His Majesty promised the prince one of Sal's princesses as part of the peace terms. Dia thinks it seems His Highness is finally here to claim his bride. Haineal thinks, but that was 2 years ago. Have I returned to the past? Present day, so that's Prince Lutz Viante, the second prince of Traikas? Just look at that cold, piercing gaze of his. They say he is a relentless war hound with an insatiable thirst for blood. A man whispers if it weren't for him, we never would have lost the war, nor would we be forced to offer a peace tribute. Show. The war hound will hear you. Haineal thinks I hear he's been offered his pick amongst the 5 princesses. So, what if he has? It still won't make him the heir to the throne. In any case, I've heard he holds little power in Traikas. Indeed, that's what everyone thought 2 years ago. It is no wonder they pitted the princess who would become his bride. But I know better. Before long, the crown prince of Traikas will succumb to an illness. And in the ensuing struggle for the throne, that man, Lutz Viante, will triumph. He will rise as the Emperor of Traikas, and the Sal princess who is given to him will become the Empress. She remembers her past and thinks, and I will meet my end at the hands of my husband, Lord Chater. He swore his love for me, only to chase after another the moment I found myself with child. But that mattered not to me. All I wanted was to keep my baby safe. Princess Haineal says, Dia, bring out all my dresses and jewelry, would you? Dia says, all of them, Your Highness? Haineal says, we have a guest at the palace, and I must be prepared to receive him. He's here to choose his bride, after all. Dia says, oh, you needn't worry about that, Your Highness. Your future lies with Lord Chitair. With 5 princesses at his disposal, I can't imagine His Majesty would choose to send you off to Traikas. Dia says I know he may not be the most doting of fathers, but I am certain His Majesty still wishes for your happiness in matrimony. Heinil looks in the mirror and says right. Given the immense fortune generated by Chitair's mines, my father will surely be inclined to grant him the bride he desires. And for a man of the Count's standing, courting an illegitimate princess, born of a maid, no less, is hardly an imposition. So, yes, I have no doubt I will be granted to him in marriage, just as I was in my past life. Heinil says, is there nothing more provocative I could wear? And bring me more jewels, the most lavish ones you can find. Dia says, your highness. Whatever has come over you? You've always loathed drawing attention to yourself. Heinil thinks this time, I won't put my faith in something as fickle as love. I have no need for anyone's affections. This time, no one will lay a finger on you, because Mama will make you the crown prince of the empire. This time, I will change both of our fates. Heinil's mother's birthday banquet. Heinil, my dear. Heinil? Heinil said, oh, forgive me, mother. I didn't mean to drift off. What is it you were saying? Her mother said, so you've come to toast your dear old mother's birthday, and yet your mind seems to be elsewhere. Here, give that to me. Heinil said my mother once served as a maid of the palace. After being summoned to the king's bedchamber for her beauty, she bore me, securing a place as one of his concubines, but among the other 5, she found herself leading a stifled life. Her mother said I was talking about Lord Chitair, dear. I expect he will make a formal proposal any day now. All the ladies of the court, noble women and princesses alike, seem to be utterly enamored by the Count. It is a blessing, truly, that he is so taken by my daughter despite the common blood she bears from me. She thinks I had thought the same in my former life, which is why I was so happy when he proposed. Grateful, even. But now that I know what that man is capable of, one way or another, I must secure a proposal from Prince Lutz. Rumor has it that he's a bloodthirsty warhound, but since arriving in Cell, he has remained entirely out of sight. It seems he has no plans to engage in any social affairs beyond official gatherings. What grounds could a lesser-born princess like myself possibly have to approach him? Of course, today is my mother's birthday. And in my past life, there was an incident that took place the very next day. An incident I could never forget, because Prince Lutz killed someone within the palace walls. A man said, I beg your pardon. Are you accusing me of thievery? Heinil said an item belonging to Prince Lutz has gone missing, and he seems to think you might be responsible, Commander. But surely this is a simple misunderstanding. The man replied, of course it is a misunderstanding. I don't even know what it is His Highness has supposedly lost. Heinil said the item in question is a small almoner embroidered with the image of a goddess, with inlaid amethysts set as her eyes. I have no clue how he came by the almoner or why he took it. All I know is what it looks like and that this man stole it. You have it on you now, don't you? Come tomorrow, Lutz Viante will uncover this man's crime and kill him. But now, in this life, Heinil thinks I must use this knowledge to alter the course of fate. She said, rest assured, I am only here to resolve His Highness's misgivings. The man replied, I'm sorry? Heinil raised her hand and said, you found the pouch in the Western Palace, and you've simply been waiting for a chance to return it to its rightful owner, yes? Give it to me, and I will see it is returned to His Highness with a full explanation. I'll tell him I was the one who discovered it. You won't be mentioned at all. The commander said, then, if you would be so kind, Your Highness, I ask that you explain this matter to the prince in a way that leaves no room for any unfortunate misunderstandings. She gave a nod and said, of course. Consider it handled. The commander bowed and left. Heinil thinks I did it. I've never seen the almoner up close before. It's even more exquisite than I remember. It must be worth a fortune. The prince is said to hold this almoner dear, rarely ever letting it out of his sight. There were even whispers that it belonged to his late mother. If I play this right, I might gain an opportunity to speak with him. And if I could capture his interest, I might just secure a proposal, too. Lutz raised his sword and said, I had every intention of killing that wretched thief the moment I caught him, and yet here we are. Why, pray tell, would a princess of this kingdom trouble herself to protect a lowly criminal? Curiosity alone stayed my hand. Heinil thinks, but how? I didn't sense anyone approaching. She said, how did you get in here? Lutz suddenly stepped forward. Heinil thinks, those eyes, they don't seem human. Prince Lutz pushed past her and snatched the pouch and said, phew, Lutz thinks just as well I found it before someone ended up dead. Even a moment longer, and it might have been too late. Heinil thinks he's drawing his sword. Am I truly to be accused of theft and killed by him in this life? Heinil sat on the floor and said, please, Your Highness. Just give me a moment to explain. I assure you, I never sought to steal your pouch, nor to hide it away. I had every intention of returning it to you tomorrow with all due honor. Lutz said, then what compelled you to cover for that thief and seek me out directly? Is he some secret lover of yours, perhaps? Heinil said, he is nothing of the sort. I only feared that if he died by your hand over some needless misunderstanding, it could lead to another conflict between our realms. Lutz said, what a touching display of patriotism. The prince turned again and said, if you care so deeply for your kingdom, perhaps you should have spoken up before your father launched that foolish attempt at an invasion. Lutz said, I still recall the smell of the blood of the Sal soldiers I cut down, as clearly as if it were only yesterday. Heinil said, I'm well aware that we must atone for the bloodshed we so recklessly spilled in our ambition to claim Triocasian lands. My father has assured His Imperial Majesty that one of Sal's 5 princesses will be offered to the Empire as a gesture of reconciliation. Lutz said, yes. It seems Princess Selah, the true-born daughter, was too precious to part with, so he has offered the Canal City and a lesser-born princess instead. They say there are 5 princesses in Sal, each born of a different concubine. I take it you are one of them? Heinil replied, I am, Your Highness. Is there perhaps anyone you had in mind? Lutz said, no, not that I can say. I haven't given it much thought. Heinil thinks, naturally. In my past life, he chose one of us at random, as if it were some bothersome task he desired to be over and done with. From what I've heard, he has no real interest in women, so beyond fulfilling his duty to sire and heir, he hardly ever engaged with his wife. But her child became the crown prince, while mine. Heinil said, if that is the case, I ask that you choose me. Lutz said, what? Heinil said, I had planned to formally make this request tomorrow, but should you choose me, I will do anything Your Highness asks of me. Lutz smiled and said, I'll admit, it was maddening to win the war, only to be saddled with the prospect of marrying some illegitimate princess from a defeated nation, but this might actually prove to be interesting. The prince picked up the candle and, smiling, said the spoils of this war are quite unique, to say the least. A marriage proposal from a woman on her knees in little more than her underclothes. Heinil thinks, wait, my negligee. It's practically sheer. Lutz said, what are you covering up for? You said you wanted to be my wife, didn't you? Heinil thinks you'll need to do better than that if you hope to win my favor. Heinil thinking, this is my chance. I must do whatever it takes to change my fate, for my survival, and for my child's. Heinil said, if leaving myself exposed is what you desire, I'm more than willing to oblige. Heinil took off the clothes in front of Lutz and said, would this be more to Your Highness's liking? Lutz said, you seem to have a knack for catching one's interest. Heinil thinks, what am I to do now? Lutz was silent for a moment, and then he hugged Heinil. Lutz said, that was amusing, I'll give you that. But I didn't travel all this way just to see naked women. Cover yourself up, before I grow bored. Let's hear it then. What is your reason for all of this? Why go to such lengths? The only reason I am keeping you alive is to sate my curiosity. Heinil covered and thinks there is a man who intends to propose to me. And my father will almost certainly give him his blessing. She said, but that is not what I want. Lutz said, then why not refuse? She replied, because I have no choice in the matter. Heinil said, unless, of course, the Imperial Prince of Triacas were to claim me as his bride first. Lutz said, you must truly despise this man. Still, it is a reckless gamble you are making. You might find yourself fleeing a tiger, only to wander right into the jaws of a dragon. I hear the rumors about me have reached as far as Sal. They say that I have always been more beast than man, my savagery unmatched. Lutz touched his lips and said, and that I become a madman in my rage, unable to determine friend from foe. A bloodthirsty fiend, who finds greater pleasure in spilling blood than in the embrace of a woman's arms, or so they say. Heinil said, it makes no difference to me. All I ask is that you promise me one thing. Lutz replied, which is, Hiniel said that I be the one to bear your child. It is a wife's duty, after all, to provide an heir. I require no affection from your highness, only your word that you will protect our child as your rightful successor. If you can promise me that, I will ask nothing more of you. Knocking the door, a voice said, Your Highness? It's me, Dia. I noticed the curtains billowing from below and thought your window might be open. Shall I come in and shut it for you? If you leave it like that, you're bound to catch a chill. Hiniel replied, and no. There's no need, Dia. I'll take care of it. Meet me at the Western Palace tomorrow at noon. You'll get your answer then. At this moment the wall was torn apart by Lutz. Hiniel thinks, but we're 2 stories high. Lutz turned, saw her, and went away. The following afternoon at the Western Palace, Dia said, Your Highness, you look absolutely radiant today. What is the occasion for all this finery? Might it be that you're expecting Lord Shater? Hiniel said, Not quite, Dia. Dia asked, Goodness, what happened to your hand? Hiniel replied, Goodness, what happened to your hand? Hiniel thinks the scratch from the almoner last night still hasn't healed. Will the prince really accept my proposal? I just can't fathom what he's thinking. He seemed utterly uninterested in me last night. I wonder if today's attire might help. I must have appeared so unkempt in my nightgown. It's no wonder I couldn't hold his interest. Hiniel's mother said, My. What have we here? I heard the palace maids were loitering about in improper attire, lured by rumors of the dashing imperial prince, so I thought I'd best come to restore order. But I never expected a princess to be at the head of it all. Hiniel bowed and said, Why, Your Majesty, greetings. And my greetings to the 1st and 3rd concubines as well. One girl said, I always knew the 5th concubine was lacking in proper decorum. She was once a maid, after all, but I never imagined she would raise her own daughter to be so vulgar. Another replied, Just look at her. First, she snared Lord Shater with nothing but her looks, and now she's shamelessly putting herself on display to seduce the imperial prince. Hardly surprising, considering her mother used the same wanton tactics. Like mother, like daughter, as they say. All that time spent pretending to be so prim and proper, now, at last, she shows her true colors. Hiniel thinks my mother was dragged into the king's bedchamber at his drunken whim, and she has been subjected to endless torment and humiliation ever since. Perhaps that's why she so wished for me to end up with a man who won't torture me. If only she knew how I died at Shater's hands. Pardon my interruption, Evan said, but His Imperial Highness Prince Lutz is expecting his guest. Evan bowed and said, Princess Hiniel, I presume? I am Evan Leneuve, aide to Prince Lutz. I understand His Highness has invited you to the Western Palace. Please, allow me to escort you. She said, Greetings, Your Highness. I must apologize for my ill manners last night. I neglected to offer you a proper greeting in my state of confusion. Here is the robe you so kindly lent me. Lutz said your name is of no interest to me. Now, as for your proposal, I have a few terms of my own. If you are willing to accept them, I shall take you as my wife. Girl asked, Your terms, Your Highness. May I ask what they are? Before we get to that, there's something I'd like to know. Shater Phyll, the man they call your betrothed. Hiniel said, Am I betrothed? That's what people are saying. Lutz said he's earned quite the reputation as the love-struck count. What is it about him that you so dislike? If it is simply the title of princess consort you're after, I can tell you now, you're making a mistake. Frankly, you'd be better off as a countess by his side than as my wife. A life of marital bliss is not what I'm after. And why is that? Hiniel replied, Well, there are reasons I cannot share with your highness. Even if I were to explain, you would not understand. She thinks nor would he believe me if I told him the truth, that I was killed by that man while carrying his child. Hiniel said, All I desire, your highness, is to serve you as your wife. If you'll have me, I promise to fulfill every duty as expected of me. Lutz said becoming my wife will only afford you the empty title of imperial consort, nothing more. I will sire an heir purely out of obligation, but beyond that, there will be no such thing as shared conversations, no needless intimacy. You will ask for nothing else of me, and even if you bear my heir, the child will never hold true power. Those are my terms. Do you accept? Hiniel smiled and nodded her head and replied, Yes, Your Highness. I would be honored. Let's ask very well then. I shall make my proposal tomorrow. Hiniel replied, thank you, your highness. I will serve you with my whole heart, truly. Hiniel thinks he's acting as though he's doing me some grand favor. Let's ask, you may leave. Dia said, did everything go well, your highness? What did you discuss with the prince, if I may ask? Everyone is dying to know. I hear he invited you to speak with him personally. Hiniel said, oh, just a small matter that needed to be settled. But yes, everything went well. He is rather intimidating, but what a devastatingly handsome man. Dia asked, oh, but what if Lord Shater hears of this and grows jealous? You two are practically engaged. After all, Hiniel thinks poor Dia has no idea that I am about to become the imperial princess consort of Traikas. I can't bear the thought of taking her to such a distant, foreign land, and she would face nothing but hardship there. Dia said, is something the matter, your highness? Hiniel replied, no, it's just, the prospect of marriage has me feeling a bit nervous, that's all. Dia replied, you have nothing to worry about, your highness. I'm right here by your side. Tomorrow, I'll make sure you are the most magnificent sight this kingdom has ever beheld. When Lord Shater finally proposes, he'll be so utterly enchanted that he'll lose all sense of himself. The next day, Hiniel thinks I haven't seen this piece before. Where did you get it? Dia said, it's beautiful, isn't it? The fifth concubine was most gracious to lend it to us. My mother? Dia replied, yes. She said it was a gift from His Majesty. I thought it would go perfectly with your hair. Hiniel thinks the only gift my father ever gave her, and she's entrusting it to me. Mother must want me to look my finest today. I wonder if I may have been a bit too bold in my choice of dress. Hiniel saw herself in the mirror and said, well, I never. Celia said, if it isn't Hiniel. Celia, the king's true-born daughter. It's been so long since we last met. Why, I hardly recognized you. Hiniel said, good evening, your royal highness. Celia's friend said so. The thought of becoming a countess has emboldened you, has it? You're dressed rather differently today. Another replied, huh? Or perhaps she's afraid Lord Shater may not propose after all. Celia walked away and said, I suppose if she showed up looking as drab as she usually does, he might very well reconsider. Hiniel thinks I feel exhausted already. Shater said, Princess Hiniel, I almost didn't recognize you. You are truly breathtaking tonight. I am at a loss for words. She thinks Shater phyll. Hiniel thinks the last thing I wanted was to catch his eye. Hiniel said, Lord Shater, it's been quite a while. Hiniel walked away. Shater pulled her and said, what happened here? How did you get this wound? Hiniel said, it's nothing, really. I merely scraped myself on a branch. Hiniel thinks the scratch from that almoner left a scar after all. But why is he getting so upset? It's almost frightening. Shater said, I'll need to have a word with your maidservant. Allowing her mistress to be marked in such a way, it's inexcusable. She thinks marked? He speaks as if I'm merely a trinket in his possession. Shater said, seeing that scar on your flawless skin truly pains me, your highness. She thinks no. People are murmuring, isn't that the Count and Princess Hiniel over there? What on earth is going on? Shater said, ahem, have I done something to upset you? Lutz said, Hiniel. There you are. I've been searching all over for you. Lutz clenched his hand and said, I see you've hurt your hand. Was that perhaps my doing? Lutz said in his ear, my deepest apologies if so. What is the meaning of this? Chhatri said, I take it that northern customs are quite liberal indeed. Here in Sal, however, kissing the hand of a mere acquaintance would be deemed rather improper, especially if that acquaintance is a lady. Lutz replied, oh, I wasn't aware. But how intriguing that those who boast of their propriety should invade another's territory unannounced. Lutz clenched the hand of Chhatri and said, and now see fit to allow a mere noble to interfere. Am I to take this as a sign that your kingdom has no interest in making peace with Traikas, announcing their royal majesties, the king and queen? The king came in and said, Prince Lutz? And Count phyll. What on earth has brought about this rather unsettling air between the two of you? Lutz replied, I was told that I would be offered a princess of Sal at tonight's gathering. Let us settle the matter now. The king said to Chhatri, phyll, now you say? Chhatri said, Your Majesty. May I remind you that we have already spoken on this matter. You gave me your word that I would receive your answer today. I wish to take Princess Hiniel as my bride. Hiniel thinks that he has already sought father's blessing. Lutz said, as do I, a pity indeed. But, alas, my mind is already firmly set. The king said you want Heinil? And the both of you at that. Chatri said yes, your majesty. I have cherished Princess Heinil for as long as I can remember. I humbly ask for your majesty's blessing to take her as my bride. Lutz said you offered me my pick amongst the 5 princesses, did you not? She is the one I want. People were murmuring. The king said, what is to be done? Lutz thinks I must tread carefully. I cannot risk inciting the wrath of the Triocasians, yet I cannot simply disregard my word to Count Peachwilel. The king said, Prince Lutz, I believe you have yet to meet each of my 5 daughters. Surely it would be wise to do so before making your decision. People whispered indeed. Why, of all the princesses, must it be Heinil? Perhaps he does not know that she is but a half-born princess, tainted by lowly blood. Lutz said, but before we settle this matter, there is one thing I neglected to address. Heinil thinks what? Lutz said, Count Peachwilel, was it? I believe the man owes me an apology. The king said, an apology? Pray tell, what has the count done to offend your highness? Lutz said, it would seem the blood I spilled in battle was not quite enough. I did, for a moment, consider setting the Sal Palace ablaze and claiming all 5 princesses and their ladies as slaves. Yet I contained my wrath at my father's behest, and now a mere count of the conquered kingdom presumes to mock the prince of the victorious. The king shouts, how dare he interrupt me? He thinks blast. A breach of peace could put us all in grave danger. The king said, Count Peachwilel, what manner of insolence is this? I command you to apologize at once. Chatri Peachwilel bowed and said, I sincerely apologize for my indiscretion, your highness. I hope you will pardon my folly and enjoy the rest of the festivities. Lutz said, I see only one way I might find joy in this evening. Lutz hugged Heinil and said, by taking the woman of my choice as my bride. Then, perhaps, I may be willing to overlook the impudence of this lowly count. People murmured and Chatri Peachwilel grew angry. Heinil bowed and said, your majesty, please. Her mother said, I beg you to spare Heinil. Rest assured, I bear her no ill intent. Lutz said, I misplaced something of great importance yesterday, but with Princess Heinil's assistance, I was fortunate enough to reclaim it. She has earned my gratitude, and so she will be well protected and cared for in Traikas. She is, after all, the only thing about this land I find to my liking. Heinil thinks his words are surprisingly kind. This, at least, will be easier for my mother to bear than seeing me hauled off against my will. Heinil Plaquet. The king said you are to serve His Imperial Highness Prince Lutz Viante wholeheartedly. Do not forget that you are going to Traikas for the sake of peace between our 2 nations. Heinil replied, yes, your majesty. She thinks yes. It's done. Lutz thinks a real scourge on my nerves, that one. Lutz said, I admit, I do feel a hint of remorse for claiming a princess already spoken for. Perhaps we could ease matters by finding a worthy match for the count here and now. Heinil thinks Sochater is to select his bride now? The king said, a fine idea indeed. Count Peachwilel, you shall take a princess of your choosing as your bride. Your majesty, there is but one lady I desire, Lutz said, choose. Let us proceed as the count suggests, Count Peachwilel. Come now, there's no need to despair. Count Peachwilel said, then I shall choose her. Chatri thinks, but that's, Mia, the one who was Lutz's wife in my previous life. So I am to marry Lutz. Heinil thinks has fate somehow appended itself. Heinil said, my bride appears to be quite shaken by this sudden proposal. Allow me a moment to speak with her. Lutz said, I thought I gave you everything you asked for. Is something the matter? Heinil replied, no, your highness. I am simply overcome with relief at the thought of not having to marry that man. I am grateful for your generosity, truly. Lutz replied, good. Heinil said, will you be taking a brief rest? Lutz replied, it's far too hot. I can hardly keep my eyes open. She thinks he finds this weather hot? Well, I suppose that makes sense, considering Traikas is in a perpetual winter. This may very well be my last summer. She must be due any day now. Those last few weeks are the most difficult, with all that weight bearing down. Still, how marvelous it must be to know that her child will soon be in her arms. My dear child, she thinks in the past how I longed to meet you. If only I had been granted just a little more time. Lutz said, you're crying? She replied, HM? Oh, I thought you had fallen asleep. Lutz said, why? You assured me there was nothing wrong. Heinil replied, oh. Well, I was just thinking of my mother, I suppose, and the tears came unbidden. Let's replied your mother? Would that be the concubine who looked as though she might faint when I asked for your hand earlier? She replied, yes, your highness. My mother entered the palace as a maid. She was made a concubine after my birth, but she never earned His Majesty's favor. I cannot help but fear that, without me, her life in the palace will only grow more trying, Lutz said, and that is why they call you the half-born princess? Because your mother was a maid? She replied, oh yes, indeed. Hiniel thinks it seems he's heard everything. Lutz turned his head and replied TSK. I don't care for that in the slightest. Hiniel thinks because I am a lesser princess. Perhaps I've said too much. No, he would have found out regardless. Surely, he wouldn't choose to overlook this, and to think he holds the title of king. I should think that any man who drunkenly hauls women off to his chambers is nothing more than an unbridled mutt. They all seem to take great delight in mocking you and your mother. Lutz said they all seem to take great delight in mocking you and your mother. The blame lies with that cur, yet it is the innocent who face the people's scorn. I tell you, there is not a single thing I like about this land, from the weather to its very customs. I intend to leave immediately following the wedding ceremony. I suggest you spend time with your mother while you can, for I have no plans to return once we depart for Traikas. Hiniel said, oh, yes, your highness. Lutz replied, let us head back inside then. It's far too hot out here. Well? Are you simply going to stare? Has Sal no custom of escorting a lady? She replied, and no, your highness. Thank you. And try not to cry in front of others. It will only make it seem as if I am dragging you off against your wishes, Lutz said, and all my efforts to appear the love-struck fool would be for naught. She replied, your efforts, your highness? Lutz replied, surely, you didn't think I was speaking in earnest at the celebration earlier, did you? I had to insist on taking you as my bride, despite the rumors of your engagement. Playing the part of the enamored suitor was necessary, if only to keep up appearances. I presume that is better than having your mother lamenting that her poor daughter was stolen away by some northern brute. Hiniel asked, are you concerned for my mother? Lutz replied, I simply detest the sound of women weeping. And especially not in a ballroom. It isn't as though we're at war after all. Hiniel asked, I appreciate your consideration, your highness. Lutz replied, I did not act out of consideration for you. As I am here as an envoy of peace, I had no choice but to resolve matters without drawing my sword. Now please, spare me any further fuss and go inside. Hiniel replied, yes, your highness. Greetings, your highness. A girl said, Princess Hiniel. Congratulations on your engagement. And to you too, Mia. Mia, just 3 years younger than I, the girl said, a lady of humble lineage and, like me, is quiet and compliant in nature. Naturally, our reserved dispositions kept us from growing close before my passing. Your highness, I'm sorry. Hiniel said, for what? The girl said, I never imagined that I would be the one to marry Lord Shater. Hiniel said, oh, you have nothing to apologize for. Oh, you have nothing to apologize for. The girl replied, still, you and the count were. Hiniel said, oh no, it's all just gossip. I am delighted to be marrying Prince Lutz. If anything, I imagine you must have been quite startled by the unexpected engagement. The girl said it was a bit of a surprise, yes, but I must admit that I was also quite pleased. I've always longed to marry a gentleman like Lord Shater. Hiniel said, oh, is that so? The girl said, it was just a silly dream I had as a child, really. I never imagined it would truly come to pass. The girl's name is Mia. Hiniel thinks, could it be that Mia has harbored feelings for Shater all this time? Then perhaps this has worked out for the best. But if our fates truly are intertwined, then that means Mia, too, will end up. Shater said, Princess Hiniel. There you are. Might I have a word with you, somewhere private? Hiniel said, congratulations on your engagement, Lord Shater. I trust that you will take good care of Princess Mia. Chatri said, spare me your well wishes for now. I shall accept them only once I have you back by my side. Hiniel said, I shall accept them only once I have you back by my side. This matter has already been settled before His Majesty the King. Chatri said, yes, but did you really believe I would surrender so readily? Just wait for me, Hiniel, for I will save you. You are mine, after all. Hiniel said, Lord Shater, you are clearly in your cups. I shall disregard that last remark. Hiniel thinks surely he won't come after me. Lutz came and said, "Where are you off to in such a hurry?" She worried and replied, "Oh, your highness. I was just on my way to find you." Lutz said, "You were looking for me?" Hiniel replied, "Yes, yes. I was hoping to resume our earlier conversation." Lutz replied, "What exactly are you referring to?" She replied, that is, Lutz thinking to leer at a woman already spoken for, and so brazenly, too. This simply won't do. Lutz said, "It's time I put that poor fool in his place." Hiniel said, "Pardon?" Lutz asked, "Your hand, princess." She replied, "Oh, right." Lutz said, "It appears my lovely bride is growing weary. Perhaps a dance would lift her spirits." King said, "But of course. No celebration of peace would be complete without a dance." "Very well, then." Lutz replied, "It would hardly be fitting for us to take the floor alone. Why not invite the other newly betrothed couple to join us?" King said, "Marvelous idea. Let this dance serve as a mark of unity between our two nations." Lutz and Hiniel dancing. Hiniel thinking that look on his face, "I know it is merely an act, and yet, somehow, it still makes me blush. Prince Lutz is a far better dancer than I imagined." People whispering, so it's true what they say about northern men being well-built. He certainly paints a fine picture. Hiniel thinks, so this is his way of making it clear to all who belongs with whom. If only this could prompt Shater to finally let go, but it seems to be having the opposite effect. This may very well end up making matters worse for Mia. Lutz said, "I am starting to see why you despise that man. A vile sort, that one. His gaze could bore a hole through my head." Hiniel replied, "I'm sorry, your highness. If you could bear with it for just a while longer." Lutz said, "It is you who will need to bear with me." Hiniel said, "Why, your highness, please." "Let me." Lutz said, "Down?" "Very well." She replied, "Why, your highness?" "Your feet." Lutz said, "What is it?" "I find myself wanting a closer look at you, Hiniel. Those northern men are certainly quite bold, aren't they? Look at how he gazes at her. Don't they seem just like lovers?" Hiniel thinks, "I'm certain this is all just a show he's putting on for Shater. And yet, perhaps it's the weight of so many gazes on us, but my heart is positively racing." Girls are murmuring, "My, the northerners are certainly quite bold with their affections, aren't they? They say he is a heartless brute with no interest in women, but his actions seem to speak otherwise. I hear he even invited Princess Hiniel to the Western Palace last night. Could he truly have fallen for her at first glance? He hasn't shown the slightest bit of interest in the other ladies. Hiniel thinks we stand before Nushkar the fire god to join these two souls in holy matrimony." Priest said, "This willow bark, which symbolizes the vitality of life, shall entwine their destinies. May it guide them upon a path of eternal blessing. May it also open a passage to the birth of new life." Hiniel thinks, "The birth of new life. I know my child will find me in this life too. This time, I shall protect them no matter what. I will not lose them again." "Never again." Lutz said, "What is it? Why are you shaking so?" Hiniel replied, "I'm sorry. I suppose I am just a bit nervous." Priest said, "And now, as we ignite it with the sacred fire of Nushkar." Priest raised his hand angrily and said, "Bring me the tears of Nushkar at once." Priest's servant, the almoner, replied, "I'm sorry. The holy water? Now? High Priest, what is the meaning of this? Has the ceremony been disturbed in some manner?" Priest replied, "I sense a faint trace of dark magic emanating from this individual, your majesty." Almoner replied, "Dark magic? But he is the imperial prince. How could such wickedness be present here and in this most sacred of places?" Priest said, "If dark magic truly resides within his imperial highness, then I am afraid this union cannot be sanctioned." Lutz replied, Well, this is certainly the most preposterous accusation I have ever faced." Hiniel thinks, the almoner. "Why is he bringing that out now?" Lutz said, "This marriage serves, in effect, as a tribute from the conquered nation of Sal to Traikas. Are we to take this disruption as a sign of your kingdom's refusal to bear its due responsibility for the war?" Priest replied, "The tears of Nushkar will reveal the truth before all." A voice cried, W8. "High Priest, this cannot be." Priest said, "Observe. Should the holy water come into contact with a dark presence, a cloud of soot shall rise. I have devoted my entire life to serving Nushkar's will. From the day I was blessed with his divine power, I have never once erred." Lutz shouted, "Behold. It would appear there is a first for everything." This cannot be." Lutz replied, "Your religious blunders are of no consequence to me. But concerning matters of diplomacy, you will be made to answer for this." Priest said it cannot be. "Let us try once more." Lutz replied, "How much more of this indignity must I bear? I would like for this ceremony to be concluded without further spectacle." Priest said, "Why yes, of course." Man said, "High Priest, apologize for your indiscretion and proceed with the ceremony at once. The prince is not to be kept waiting. Allow me to wipe your face, your highness." Western Palace Study. Lutz entered the room. She stood from her chair and said, "What on earth transpired at the wedding ceremony, your highness? I hear King Berezil has bestowed 500,000 sons worth of gold coins as tribute. Is that true?" Lutz replied, "We must depart Sal tonight." She said, "I beg your pardon?" "Tonight, your highness." "But it is your wedding night." Lutz shouted, "That blasted old man." She said, "Old man? Are you speaking of King Berezil?" Lutz replied, "No, that wretched high priest." She said, "Your highness, whatever happened to your hand?" Lutz said, "Better this than having my face marked in soot." She replied, "I'm sorry." Lutz replied, "After so many years in service to the divine, he seems to have a remarkable knack for sensing impure energies. He has caught on to what I am." She said, "The almoner, you used it, yes?" Lutz replied, "Naturally. I pierced the puricite through to draw its power directly. It is what kept me from being detected." She said, "Your highness, we absolutely cannot allow the secrets of the imperial family to be exposed." Lutz replied, "I'm well aware of that. Which is why we must depart at once." She said, "But your highness, should you not at least seek an audience with King Berezil before leaving?" Lutz replied, "Sigh, in my current state? Certainly not. Find me a suitable excuse." She said, "And what of the princess, or rather, her imperial highness the princess consort?" Lutz replied, "The princess. There are more important matters too." She replied, "Your highness. So, you are to depart Sal tomorrow?" Heinil replied, "Yes, mother. The prince seems to be most displeased by what occurred during the ceremony. He has sent word that we are to depart tomorrow." Her mother said, "Well, understandably so, after suffering such a slight from the high priest, then I suppose this is to be our last day together." She thinks I had hoped to spend more time with mother before leaving. Her mother said, "Are you quite certain about this, my dear? I've heard Traika's is a cold and desolate place." Heinil replied, "Yes, mother. I'll be just fine. You saw for yourself how deeply Prince Lutz cares for me." Her mother said, "Yes, and for that, I am certainly grateful. But even so, Heinil, I wasn't sure whether I should give this to you, but I believe it may serve you far better than it would me." Heinil replied, "But mother, this is..." Her mother replied, "Yes. My brother gave this to me years ago. He claimed it would help me win His Majesty's favor, yet I could never bring myself to use it. She thinks I remember it well. After all, mother had given me this very elixir when I married Shater. Use it, should his heart begin to stray," she had said. It wasn't long after the wedding that Shater's affections for me began to wane. In my desperation, I turned to the elixir, hoping to rekindle his love. It was what enabled me to conceive, but once I could no longer fulfill his desires in my pregnant state, Shater, Heinil replied, "Thank you, mother. You need not worry for me. I shall fulfill my duties as princess consort of the empire, ever by Prince Lutz's side." Heinil hugged her and said, "Please, do take care of yourself, mother. I will write you." Heinil thinks, has the prince not arrived yet? The entire delegation has already gathered. The king said, "Heinil, do not forget the role you play. You have been offered to the Empire of Traikas as a gesture of peace. Henceforth, you must lead the path to unity between our nations. I trust you will not create any difficulties in your new post." Heinil replied, "I shall do my best, your majesty." The man near Lutz thinks even now he regards me not as his daughter, but merely as a duty to the crown. The king said, and in case you hadn't heard, the prince departed yesterday." Heinil replied, "Yesterday, your majesty." The king said, "Indeed. He seems to have left in quite a temper over the high priest's blunder. Do see to it that he is appeased, won't you?" Heinil replied, "Of course, your majesty." Her mother clenched her hand and said, "You must write to me, Heinil, just as you promised." Heinil replied, "And you to me, mother." "Mia," said Princess Heinil. "Please wait. I did not expect we'd be parting so soon." Heinil replied, "Your highness." Mia said, "Please, there is no need to stand on ceremony. You are the princess consort of the empire now. If only I'd had more courage, perhaps we could have spent more time together before this moment came. If I am to be honest, I always longed for us to be closer. Yet only now, when we may never meet again, do I stand here confessing such things. How foolish I must seem. Heinil said, well, it's never too late, Mia. May I write to you? Of course. I will be sure to write you back. Heinil said, come now, Dia. Do stop crying. Dia said, how could your highness even think of leaving me behind? Heinil thinks before departing, I had urged Dia to remain in Sal, but she adamantly refused. Dia said, if you are to depart without me, it shall be over my cold, dead body. Her tearful pleas to join me wore at my resolve, and in the end, I had no choice but to relent. She thinks Heinil said, I only wish to spare you from any hardship, Dia. Don't be upset. Dia said, that is not why I am upset, your highness. It is on account of Prince Lutz. Heinil said, Prince Lutz. Dia said, what husband would dare abandon his bride on their wedding night? Regardless of how incensed he might have been, it is simply inexcusable. Heinil said, oh Dia, it's hardly worth fretting over. This marriage was never for love, only peace. Dia replied, but just yesterday, His Highness treated you with such affection. How could it all change in a single night? Heinil thinks I am just grateful to have freed myself from Shater. And she said I should be thankful he showed me any kindness at all, even if only for a day. Heinil said if he is to hold me in disdain from this point forward, then so be it. I've no right to complain, given all that Sal must atone for. She said, greetings, your Imperial Highness. Heinil said, and you are? She said, Evan Lenove, at your service. I come bearing a message from Prince Lutz. Heinil said, a message for me? From Prince Lutz. Meanwhile, at the Count's manor, Evan said Prince Lutz was indeed absent from the delegation's procession, my lord. Princess Heinil seems to be traveling alone. The prince is said to be staying at the estate of Viscount Duen. Chaudhry said, and Duen, you say? Chaudhry said, so it seems he truly did depart last night. Duen said, yes, my lord. Chaudhry said, good. Then Heinil has yet to share a bed with that wretch. Evan said, first, allow me to inform you of the day's itinerary, your highness. We will soon be crossing the canal and entering the borders of Traikas. It looks as though we will be traveling well into the night, so I encourage you to take some rest. In addition, Prince Lutz has already arrived in Duen, near the border. The delegation will also spend the night there. Evan said again His Highness sends his apologies for his early departure, as he had urgent matters to attend to. Heinil thinks in actual fact, he collapsed before he could leave me with any such message, but I suppose I must do my part to smooth things over on his behalf. Evan said, so he didn't leave me behind out of anger at the High Priest, after all. Heinil said, thank you for relaying the message, Sir Evan Lenove. Evan replied, of course, your highness. As I mentioned before, we will soon board a ship in the canal city of Visar. I would suggest your highness take a light meal, as the voyage may bring on a bout of seasickness. Heinil said, thank you. I shall. Dia said, then, it would seem His Highness did not leave in anger after all. Heinil said, yes, Dia. Does that put your mind at ease? When she reached this must be Duen Castle, she thinks is this where the prince is staying? Duen said, greetings, your Imperial Highness. It is an honor to receive you here. I can only imagine how wearisome your long journey must have been. Heinil said, greetings, your Imperial Highness. It is an honor to receive you here. I can only imagine how wearisome your long journey must have been. Is His Highness inside? I was hoping I could greet him. Duen said, ah yes. Well, you see, Evan said, Viscount Duen, let us keep the pleasantries brief. I'm afraid everyone is quite tired. Duen said, yes, certainly. I shall escort our esteemed guests inside and arrange for a meal at once. Heinil said, might, Prince Lutz be joining us? I do wonder if his urgent matter has been seen to. Evan said, your highness. There is something I must discuss with you in private. I'm sorry. His Highness was poisoned and has collapsed. Heinil replied, see, could it possibly have been someone from SL? Evan said, more likely, this was the work of someone within Traikas. Prince Lutz has always had a rather strained relationship with his half-blood brothers. Most fortunately, His Highness received prompt treatment, so his life is no longer at risk. Still, he is not yet well enough to be up and about. Heinil replied, then, his departure yesterday We feared it would only complicate matters if Sal were to find out, so we made it appear as though His Highness left in his ire over what occurred during the wedding ceremony. Evan said given the urgency of the matter, we brought the prince here first, then joined him later. I am most sorry we could not inform your highness sooner. Heinil said I see, is he better now? Evan said he is still in need of rest. It would be best for you to take the adjoining room tonight, your highness. And I must ask that you keep the prince's condition private. Heinil thinks who would have thought that someone so strong could be felled by mere poison. Dia said, did you happen to see the prince, your highness? I noticed he was not present for dinner. Heinil thinks it seems I'll have to keep this from Dia too. And said I did. He appears to be terribly busy. He likely took his meal in his own chamber. Dia said your very first night as newlyweds, and yet His Highness insists on dining alone. Surely, you are not to sleep apart as well. Heinil said perhaps. I wouldn't wish to disturb him if he is preoccupied. Dia replied well, yes, of course. But I shall keep watch outside your door, just in case. Who knows? The prince may very well come to visit you in the night. She thinks if he sees that look on your face, he might be inclined to turn right back. Heinil replied I cannot tell Dia the truth about what happened, of course, but simply having her here with me seems to make the weight of everything feel more bearable, come what may. I can only hope that, in this life, we might find some measure of peace together in the north. Heinil, sleeping in the bed, thinking it's so cold, could it be morning already? And said Dia? Meanwhile some people came and began to take the princess away, gagging the princess, who cried loudly. The men were hiding their faces and one of them said, keep your mouth shut. One word, and I'll slice clean through your artery. Heinil thinks he managed to slip past the guards and out of the castle in mere moments. Whoever he is, he knows these grounds well. What is he hoping to gain by abducting me? And where on earth is he taking me? No. If he takes me into the forest, I'll never be found. I must find a way to alert someone. Please, please. Heinil crying someone, anyone. Please help me. Outside, Evan said to Prince Lutz, your highness. You're awake at last. The prince replied, ugh, where am I? Evan said in Dwen, your highness. Lutz said, how long have I been out? 2 days now. The delegation arrived yesterday, just as planned. Lutz said, and the girl, I mean, the princess? What of her? And the girl, I mean, the princess? What of her? Evan smiled and said, not to worry, your highness. Rest assured, the princess has been escorted here without incident. The prince said, me? Worry? Certainly not. She is but a prize of war. I was merely checking that she, Dia shouted, your highness. Oh, your highness. I beg of you, please help. Prince Lutz. Evan said you are the princess consort's lady-in-waiting, yes? What appears to be the matter? Dia replied, please, it's her highness. Hick, she is. Dia bowed and cried, saying, she is nowhere to be found. Princess Heinil is missing. Evan said, for now, I have instructed the maid to keep quiet about the matter, your highness. Shall I gather a search party? We have about 30 guards accompanying the delegation, so if we take 10 of those men, Lutz said no, I will be going alone. Evan said, I beg your pardon. Your highness, that is entirely out of the question. You have only just regained your strength. Lutz said sending the knights will only invite needless chatter. I can handle this faster on my own and with far more discretion. Evan said, but if your highness is also absent, it will not be long before the people realize that both you and the princess are missing. Lutz replied, then come up with a plausible explanation. Let them think I've whisked the princess away on an impromptu wedding journey to help her settle into life in Traikas, if you must. Evan said, ever the romantic, aren't you? And do you suppose they'll actually believe such a tale? Lutz said, after that spectacle I made back in Sal? Oh, they'll believe it. Lead your unit out of Dwen and circle westward to Tubwan. I shall join you in Hawkwick in 3 days. Evan said, your highness, do you truly intend to find the princess and reach Hawkwick in just 3 days? Is such a thing even possible? Lutz said, I will see that it is. In any case, the culprit is almost certainly one of 2 men, either that deranged count, Shater Phyll, or that bastard of a 3rd prince. Should I fail in this mission, he'll waste no time spinning tales of my supposed attempts to stir tensions between our realms. He and that insufferable mother of his would leap at the chance to see me hanged. The longer we delay, the greater danger the girl faces. I need to find her while she draws breath yet. You are to gather the agents stationed in the area and find out who is behind this. Quietly. Lutz said yes, Your Highness. Lutz thinks I knew something was amiss ever since the almoner was stolen. They failed in their initial attempt to drive me into conflict with Sal over the almoner, so now, it seems, they intend to fault me for the princess's disappearance. So it has always been. After my mother's passing, the new empress promptly took her place at court, bringing with her a son older than I. It was proof enough that the emperor had consorted with another woman while my mother yet lived. My elder half-brother seized my rightful place as crown prince, while the younger one was ever eager to claim whatever else belonged to me. I became a discarded remnant of the past, something to be tossed aside without a second thought once they had stripped me of all that was mine. That was my standing within the imperial family. Hiniel thinks the cold is unbearable. I feel as though I might freeze to death. He's leading us northward. Is he taking me to Traika's? If so, this may very well have been orchestrated by someone from the Empire itself. In my previous life, I recall Prince Lutz being caught in a bitter feud for the throne with his half-brothers. Could this be the doing of the first or third prince? Hiniel said the thief get down. Where in the world are we? The thief said, oh, what a joy it is to see you once again, princess. Chatri said, did I not assure you that I would come to your rescue? Hiniel said, what is the meaning of this? Chatri kissed her hand and said, and how very fortunate that the prince has yet to lay a hand upon you. You have always been mine, Hiniel. Hiniel thinks the chilling air, that voice, I remember it all so vividly. Where I am. Mon Monks, the very place where he took my life. Why have I returned here? Chatri hugged her and said, hush. Do not cry, my dear. A tear-stained face will only invite the wind's harsh bite. Here, I shall untie your wrists, but only if you stop crying. Hiniel thinks am I forever destined to be ensnared by this man? To have my child taken from me, time and time again. Hiniel pushed back and ran away and thinks I have to escape. Chatri shouts, get her. And there is not to be a single scratch on her, do you hear? A man ran after her and said, blast. Where do you think you're going? She thinks this time, I will not endure the same fate. Hiniel ran fast and fell, and a man clenched her as she said, let go of me. Wretched girl. Keep still, it. Shater said, Hiniel. Please, stop this at once. You will only bring yourself harm. Are you all right? The thief said, and my lord, about the matter of my payment. Shater said, I said not a single scratch. I thought I made myself perfectly clear. The thief said, why yes, my lord, but I hadn't expected her to flee, HRRK. Shater clenched her and she cried, aha. Shater said, oh dear. That gave you quite the fright, didn't it? But I had no choice, you see. Shater said defiling you with those vile bruises was insult enough, but to then set his eyes upon what is mine, that I could not abide. Shater set her on the bed, clenched her feet, and said, you seem quite shaken. Hiniel said, where are we? Shater said, my private villa within Simoir Castle, a hidden sanctuary far from prying eyes. This is where we shall live out our days, princess, just the two of us. Isn't it all just terribly romantic? Hiniel thinks Shater Peachwilel is truly out of his mind. Hiniel said, but what of Princess Mia? You are already wed to her. Shater said, let me handle that, my dear Hiniel. You need only rest easy. Shater kissed her feet and said, for now, I am far more interested in savoring the wedding night we were so cruelly deprived of. Hiniel said, have you no shame? I am a princess of the empire now. Shater said, I will not stand by and let that fiendish brute have you. Hiniel said, have you gone utterly mad? My marriage to Prince Lutz is a binding treaty between our two nations. Should Traikas learn of this, they will spare neither you nor Sal. Shater said, worry not, my princess. This is precisely what the Empire wanted. Hiniel said, what? What are you saying? Shater said, your feet are rather slow to warm, aren't they? Shater kissed her legs and caressed her, and Hiniel shouted, what on earth are you? Shater said, now. Do try to hold still. If you keep thrashing about, I may just be tempted to pin you down. Surely, you wouldn't wish to consummate our union while still frozen through. Hiniel thinks this is what the Empire wanted. Shater said, how very soft you are. She thinks did Traikas arrange for my abduction? Lutz's standing in the empire has long been precarious. Someone from the imperial family may very well have plotted this entire affair to push him toward his ruin. The commander who stole the almoner, now that I recall, it was strange for someone of his rank to do such a thing. Hiniel thinks I ask that you explain this matter to the prince in a way that leaves no room for any unfortunate misunderstandings. If what Shater claims is true, then that commander must have acted under imperial orders, only to be caught by me, thanks to my memories of the past. Shater pushed her onto the bed and kissed her chest, saying, "What thoughts could possibly consume you so, while I am here before you? Come, let me warm you in my embrace." Hiniel thinks no. Lutz said I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but there is no time. You are to return to me when the time comes. Am I understood? Lutz thinks the puricite serves to dispel malevolent energy. So, the further it strays from my side, the stronger the darkness within me grows, those same primal instincts that have threatened to rule me since my youth. My senses are sharpening. A flurry of scents, imperceptible to mere mortals, fills the air around me. Found you. Shater said the brush of your skin against mine stirs in me a hunger I can no longer suppress. Come, let me warm you in my embrace. She thinks no. I cannot let him take me, without so much as a fight. Hiniel said, Shater, please. I cannot bear for it to be this way. This moment should be one born of affection, not of force. My father's decision may have complicated matters for us, but I know how deeply you care for me. Let me warm myself first, so that we may come together as true lovers would. Shater said, you are absolutely right. Forgive me, Hiniel. I let my passion get the better of me. I would never wish to sully this night with such recklessness. Hiniel said, that man left me an utter wreck, Shater. I'd like to bathe and change into something more presentable, too. Shater said, of course, my dear. I'll see to it right away. I dismissed all the attendants to ensure our privacy, so I'll need to heat the bathwater myself. Please, just give me a moment. Hiniel thinks I must escape and make for the forest. I need to buy myself more time. Shater left the room, and Hiniel ran away. Shater returned and said, forgive me for the delay. What is the meaning of this? Meanwhile, she slipped outside, looked down from the curtain, saw no one, fashioned the curtain into a rope, and began to descend. At that moment, Shater grabbed her by the arm and said, what exactly were you trying to accomplish? You dare try to deceive me? Shater clenched her neck and said, a half-born wretch like you, born of a mere maid, ought to fall to your knees in gratitude for the affection I've shown. And yet you not only spurn me, but now seek to make a mockery of me as well. Shater pushed her back and said, I would have treated you as a princess, but now you are nothing more than a paramour, no, a mere slave to warm my bed each night. And I think you'll find it's time to accept your station. Your face is in quite the state. I cannot abide such flaws. I'll see it treated, for it is doing little to stir my desire in its current condition. But mark my words, defy me again, and I will make this night a living hell for you. On the other side, Lutz thinks the body has already grown cold. It seems the man has been dead for quite some time. Her scent, it leads to that building. That must be where she is. Ugh, curses. I've been without the almoner for far too long. My energy is growing unstable. Losing control now spells trouble. Shater said to Hiniel, I'm off to the castle to fetch some ointment. Try anything like that again, and I'll have you incapable of walking for days. Hiniel thinks, should I fall victim to Shater, would Prince Lutz still take me back? What if I end up forever chained to this monster, trapped in a life far worse than my last? She cut her thumb, thinking, no, I cannot dwell on such thoughts. I need to find a way out. Hiniel said there must be something I could use. She clenched the stick and charged the door, thinking I'll need to strike the moment he steps through. But why isn't he using his key? He destroyed the door. Hiniel wondered and said, Prince Lutz. Lutz said, Hiniel. Planning to greet me with a good clobbering, were you? How terribly affectionate of you. Hiniel hugged Lutz and said, you came. Oh, thank you, your highness. Truly, thank you. Lutz said, all right, now settle down. Lutz thinks with my senses so heightened, even the slightest touch feels. Lutz said, this is all a bit excessive, isn't it? I didn't realize my arrival warranted such theatrics. Hiniel said, and my apologies, your highness. I was just so relieved to see you, I could hardly contain myself. Lutz said, your face. What happened to you? Hiniel said, I tried to escape, But he caught me, Lutz said TSK. I didn't imagine he would dare to treat you so despicably. There's no time to waste. Do you have your shoes? Hiniel said no, Your Highness. Please, let's just leave. We must go now before he Lutz lifted her and said this should speed things up. At that moment, Shater arrived, drew his sword, and shouted, Why you cur? How did you manage to get in here? Lutz said, Cur? Watch your tongue, Count. I always knew you were mad, but to dare lay hands on the princess consort of Traikas? You must be utterly deranged. Lutz said that must be the guards being summoned. Stay here. Do not come down. Shater said my men will be arriving shortly. Give me the girl, and you may yet live to see another day. Lutz said, Who ordered you to take the princess? Shater straightened his sword and said the girl first. Then we shall talk. Lutz said as he walked toward him, If you insist on holding your tongue. Finally, a bloody fight broke out between them. Lutz landed a powerful blow and cut off his finger. Shater cried, Aha. Lutz said, Now, unless you wish to lose more than just a finger, speak. Who gave you the order? Shater said, Do you take me for a? Meanwhile, another blow struck him forcefully and one of his teeth broke. Shater cried, My tooth. Shater collapsed downstairs, and Lutz placed his foot on his head and said, I'll ask again. Who sent you? Pressing down harder, Shater thinks the guards will be here any minute now. Just a little longer. Lutz said, Still holding out for your valiant little troop to come save the day, are we? There were 11 men, I believe, all clad in black uniforms with crimson cloaks. Does that sound about right? I'm afraid they won't be joining us. They've all been disposed of, courtesy of yours truly. Those poor fools. Crossing me at my most unbridled was sheer misfortune indeed. Lutz said, Now speak. Who sent you? Shater said, P please. It was P Prince Kylo, the third prince of Traikas. I was merely following his orders. Lutz thinks so. It was my accursed half-brother. I almost forgot. Lutz said, This is for laying your filthy hands on my wife, and plunged his sword into his chest. Lutz thinks it's grown awfully quiet. Hiniel thinks, Is it all over now? Hiniel said, Good heavens. Lutz said, Wait, put these on for now. You'll need them for the snow. Hiniel said, Thank you, Your Highness. Is he dead? Lutz said, No, taking his life would have only complicated matters. Your abduction has left us short on time. We need to move. Hiniel said, Is it really wise to leave him as he is? Lutz said, I'd like nothing more than to finish him off, believe me. But this situation is far from simple. That deranged fool seems to be in league with none other than the third prince, the scoundrel. Should anything go awry, those snakes at court won't hesitate to point their fingers at me and tear me to shreds. And my father will no doubt claim that I have failed in my duty to protect Sal's tribute, accusing me of tarnishing the delegation's mission. It is a shame, truly, but it's best to leave him be. The fool wouldn't dare breathe a word of this to anyone anyway. Hiniel said, I see. Lutz said, By the way, you've got quite the spark in you. Lutz chuckled and said, From the way you were poised to strike earlier, you seemed quite prepared to send someone to their grave. I had a feeling, but you're far more brave than you appear. To endure such an ordeal and come through unshaken, it's quite something. Hiniel said, I was terrified, Your Highness. But, with you here now, how could I not find my strength? Guards shouted, Your Highness. Our sincerest apologies for the delay. Prince Lutz nodded and said, Now that you've graced us with your presence, clean up this mess. Evan said, Your Highness, we came as swiftly as we could following your directions, but in our haste, we were unable to make the necessary preparations. As such, Lutz said, There is no horse for Hiniel, I take it? Evan replied, Not at present, Your Highness. The carriage is still quite a ways off. Shall I fetch a mount for Princess Hiniel? Lutz said, That won't be necessary. See that you find her some proper clothing. And shoes. Evan said, Right away, Your Highness. Lutz lifted her onto the horse and said, Do you know how to ride? Hiniel replied, No, I'm afraid not. Lutz said, Then take hold of my waist. We'll be moving fast, so I suggest you keep a firm grip. Hiniel replied, Why yes, Your Highness. Hiniel thinks all this jostling. I feel as though I might fall at any moment. Lutz thinks it. With my senses still so heightened, having her pressed against me like this is nothing short of excruciating. Lutz said, Once we reach Traikas, your first priority should be learning to ride. Hiniel said, if your highness would be so kind as to instruct me, I shall try my best. Let's said you expect me to teach you? Hiniel said, I'm sorry? And no, of course not. That wasn't my intention at all. Lutz said, hold on tight. She replied, all right. Hiniel thinks, is he asleep? Well, I suppose he must be exhausted after searching for me all night. Spare me your antics and remain still, he said. I am sorry. Hiniel thinks there's something odd about his breathing. Hiniel said, are you all right, your highness? Lutz thinks, blast it. With my energy still in disarray and her scent lingering so maddeningly close, I can't seem to steady myself. Should I step outside? No, any movement now might only disrupt the flow further. Hiniel said, your highness, could it be that you are running a fever? Lutz clenched his hand and said, did I not tell you to remain still? Hiniel thinks, his hand, it's far too warm. Is he feeling unwell? Hiniel thinks, is he? But I haven't done a thing. Lutz said, tsk. Hiniel thinks the silence is unbearable. Perhaps I should speak. Hiniel said, why, your highness, might I ask, how did you manage to find me? Lutz said, from your ribbon. I found it caught in the thickets. Hiniel said, so you did indeed find it. I made sure to leave it there, hoping it might serve as a trail. Lutz said, so that was intentional, was it? You're sharper than I had anticipated. Hiniel said, but however did that ribbon alone lead you to the villa at Seymour Castle? Shall we stop the carriage for a brief rest, your highness? It has only been a day since you recovered from the poison, and you've overexerted yourself in your efforts to find me. It would do good to step outside for some air. Lutz said, yes, I suppose that would be best. Evan guided them inside and said, shall I send word to Sir Leneuve, your highness? Lutz said, just tell him I'll be delayed by half a day. Certainly, your highness. We shall take our leave now. Hiniel thinks, what am I to do? Should I assist him in washing up? Lutz said, you too. Leave me. Hiniel said, but your highness, you seem to have a fever. Allow me to fetch a damp cloth. Lutz said, I said, leave me. Lutz thinks, curses. Her scent grows stronger with her every movement. This is maddening. Hiniel said, you are barely able to move as you are. Please, at least let me help you change into something more comfortable. Lutz thinks that scent of hers. Lutz grabbed her hand, pushed her back onto the bed, and said, if you were to undress me now, do you truly believe I would simply allow you to walk away? You should know better than to tempt a starving beast with the scent of blood. Hiniel thinks he seemed wholly uninterested in me or my body until now. What could have prompted such a sudden change? Could the poison have affected him in some strange way? Lutz said, leave now, or we may very well end up consummating our marriage right here and now. The prince got up from the bed and started to leave when Hiniel came from behind and touched his shoulder. Hiniel said, I'd have no objection to that. Hiniel hugged him from behind. Hiniel thinks the prince may have come to rescue me from Shater's clutches, but that was solely out of his obligation to the peace treaty. He harbors no true affections for me, of that I am sure. For some inexplicable reason, however, he appears to be rather impassioned at the moment. I must act now to secure an heir. She hugged him tightly and said, I am your wife, and I have vowed to uphold every duty expected of me as such. She touched his face and said, whatever your highness desires, you are free to, and Hiniel kissed him. Lutz thinks, no, I cannot allow myself to be ruled by my baser instincts. If I succumb now, blood will be spilled, and once again they will all gaze upon me with terror, as though I am a creature of nightmares. I must drive her away before. Hiniel climbed onto his chest and kissed him again. Lutz hugged her tightly. Lutz thinks the raging storm within me is quieting. This warmth, this peculiar sense of comfort. What is this feeling? Could a woman's scent truly be? She thinks, what is this sensation? I feel ever so slightly more at ease. Hiniel said, perhaps your highness would like to freshen up first? You haven't even had a proper meal. I shall see to it that something is prepared for you while you bathe. Hiniel thinks, for as long as I can remember, I have steered clear of women, fearing that even the slightest touch might rouse the beast within me. Yet now, oddly enough, I feel no such impulse. Lutz said, very well. Your bathwater has been prepared, my lady. Hiniel said, pardon me, but might there be a partition available? The maid asked, I'm sorry? A partition? I'm afraid we don't typically have such. Lutz said, that will be all. You may leave us now. An inn of this nature likely caters to mercenaries or merchants at best. Hardly the sort to concern themselves with partitions for propriety, I'd wager. As we've chosen to conceal our identities to avoid undue attention, this will have to do. Hiniel said, alright. Well then, you'd best step in before the water grows cold, Your Highness. Hiniel thinks should I step outside while he bathes? Lutz said, did you not offer to assist me with my bath? Hiniel replied, I beg your pardon. Lutz said, you spoke as though you were prepared to attend to my every need. In any case, aren't you in need of a bath too? Why not wash up together to spare time? Hiniel said, tea together. Lutz said, why? Does that not fall within the bounds of a wife's duties? Hiniel thinks indeed, I have no reason to refuse. I am the one longing to bear a child, after all. And surely, it's in my best interest to indulge his attentions while they persist. Hiniel said, if that is what you desire, I will gladly assist you. Lutz thinks how odd. I've witnessed this once before, so why does it feel so entirely different now? Lutz said, that's enough. I've changed my mind. Just leave. Hiniel said, did I do something to displease you? Lutz said, no, nothing of the sort. But regardless of the circumstances, this is the marriage of an imperial prince and his princess consort, and such a union ought not to be consummated within the walls of an inn. Lutz thinks I've never felt this way before. This could be dangerous. Lutz said, let us sleep apart for the night. We can arrange for a more suitable time at the imperial palace. Hiniel thinks, why does it feel as though he's pulling away? Just moments ago, he seemed so taken with me. Has he already had a change of heart? Hiniel thinks if I let this opportunity pass and his interest wanes once again, there is no telling how long I may have to wait, perhaps even longer than Mia. Hiniel said, as I said before, I am perfectly fine with this arrangement. This place is as good as any. Hiniel said, please, Your Highness, do as you wish. Whatever you desire, wherever it may be, I will follow. She thinks it's nothing I cannot handle. After all, I have even borne a child once before. And he kissed her. Hiniel said, ngh. Hiniel thinks his touch is rough and unrefined. It's entirely unlike Shater's, who is so well-versed in the ways of women. No, this is the touch of a man who has never held a woman before. And yet, why does my body burn so readily under such clumsy, impracticed hands? Hiniel said, not here. Lutz said, it's much too tight a space. I fear I might hurt you. Let us move to the bed. Hiniel said, but we need to dry off first. Lutz kissed again. Hiniel said, why, Your Highness, wait. Hiniel pushed back and said, what is it? Hiniel thinks I mustn't falter. I've done this before. I need only close my eyes and bear it, just as I did with Shater. Lutz said, do you not wish to continue? Hiniel said, and no, not at all. I'm simply feeling a little nervous. Lutz kissed again and said, tell me if you feel any pain. Lutz thinks she doesn't appear to be hurting. She voices ngh, thinking, why am I feeling this way? It was never like this with Shater. Lutz said, do not turn your face away. Let me see you. Lutz said, Hiniel. Lutz took a plate of meal and said, it's morning. We must take our meal and prepare to depart. Hiniel said, oh, morning already? Lutz said, drink some water. Goodness, the state of you. Am I to blame for this? Hiniel said, oh, Count Peachwillow was responsible for this bruise you see and the wound on my cheek. As for the remaining marks, those were, indeed, Your Highness's doing. I can't endure any longer. Lutz said, I can no longer hold back, so you must endure. Prince Lutz said, didn't you say I was free to do as I desired? Lutz kissed again and said, in any case, you ought to get up and take your meal. Hiniel thinks it's as though I was consumed by something beyond me in that moment. Could my separation from the Puricite have driven my instincts to overtake all sense of reason? Lutz clenched the biscuit and thinks no, it wasn't that. It was an entirely different sensation. What I felt wasn't the raw, primal urge to ravage another as if I were some untamed beast. It was something far more delicate, almost as though I were adrift amidst the clouds, perhaps. A feeling of warmth, tenderness, and unparalleled bliss. It felt so incredible. I could hardly believe it was real. Is this how true intimacy between a husband and wife is meant to be? Lutz said, come now, you've been nodding off long enough. Here. I've removed the bones for you, so go on and eat. Lutz thinks eat. Given your current state, I doubt you'd even notice what passes your lips. Hiniel said, oh, thank you, Your Highness. Lutz said, the fare here leaves much to be desired, but I suppose it's better than going without. Have some coffee too. Hiniel said, it's perfectly fine. My, thank you. Hiniel said once we arrive at the palace, there'll be no need to suffer through such meals. Lutz said, but you may find it a challenge to adjust, as it's rather unlike the fare in Sao. Hiniel said, I can hardly imagine struggling to adjust to something as exquisite as the food of the imperial palace. Lutz said, well, I found the food in Sao to be an endless trial. In Traikas, we favor smoked meats. Smoking them enriches the flavor, you see, making them all the more enjoyable. Hiniel thinks so. He finds the meat dishes in Sao to be rather bland. Lutz said, here, have some more. Hiniel replied, oh, thank you. Lutz said the selection here is quite lacking, went it? Lutz thinks sitting here like this, it truly feels as though we are newlyweds, just sharing a simple breakfast together. Lutz said, is there nothing else you'd like to try? Hiniel thinks of course, we are newlyweds, but even so, and last night, he was surprisingly tender, far more so than I'd expected. Although his seemingly boundless energy was, admittedly, rather daunting, contrary to the rumors, he did not come across as a violent man in the slightest. If anything, he was quite endearing. Almost, dare I say it, adorable. Lutz said, have you finished your meal? Hiniel said, oh, why yes. Will we be departing right away? I shall ready myself at once, Lutz said. Before we leave, Hiniel hugged Lutz and said, Lutz said, let me have you once more. Hiniel said, and now? At this moment. Lutz said, yes, well, you did fall asleep, leaving me with no choice but to restrain myself throughout the night. Shall we remedy that now? Hiniel thinks I must be out of my right mind. Adorable. Far from it. The man is a crazed beast through and through. Lutz said, is it causing you much discomfort to remain seated? Hiniel replied, I'll manage. Lutz said, you there, slow the pace at once. The horseman replied right away, Your Highness. Hiniel thinks didn't he say the schedule ahead was far too demanding to allow for any delays? Lutz said we are not expected in Hawkwick until tomorrow, so there is no need to rush. If need be, we can simply travel to the palace on our own. Hiniel said, but wouldn't that only cause the others to worry? Lutz said, I've already given Evan his orders. Should we fail to arrive as planned, he will leave for Tub 1 without us. Hiniel said, even so, Dia must be quite distressed over all that has happened. Lutz said, since when has it been the role of a princess consort to trouble herself with the feelings of her maid? Enough of this nonsense. You should take some rest. Hiniel said, as I recall, it was your highness who deprived me of my rest. Lutz said, that's more than enough chatter for now. Close your eyes and sleep. Hiniel thinks perhaps he is quite adorable after all. Hawkwick. Evan said, your highnesses. At long last. We have been awaiting you. Dia said, Princess Hiniel. Dia hugged her and said, oh, your highness. Thank the heavens you are safe. I was positively beside myself. Evan said that was quite the delay. Are you feeling well? Indeed. Evan said, your highness, there is a matter I must report to you. Evan said, just as your highness suspected, this is indeed the doing of Prince Kylo. It has come to light that mercenaries stationed at Dwen Castle were mobilized with payments from the royal treasury. Really, to think he would stoop so low as to orchestrate the princess consort's abduction. Do you truly intend to let this pass without consequence? Evan said, what other choice do I have? Lutz said, we can't very well drag Shater Phyll back to the Empire as a witness. And even if we did, I doubt the man would provide any sort of credible testimony. It would only give the court reason to harp on the fact that I was embroiled in a dispute with the Count of Sel while acting as peace envoy. Bringing this to public attention would hardly do me any favors. Evan said this is utterly beyond reason. It was your highness who bore the burdens of war for the Empire all these years. Lutz said, what does that matter now? Nothing would please them more than to see me die on the battlefield. Evan said, I imagine the princess consort was terribly shaken by this ordeal. Lutz said she managed far better than I expected. Evan said, I beg your pardon? But the state of her highness's face would suggest otherwise. Lutz said I wasn't speaking of her injuries. I mean, that despite everything, she showed remarkable courage. Evan said, so I take it she has won your favor then? Lutz said, what was that? Evan smiled and said, I had assumed your highness's delay was due to some ailment, but it seems I was mistaken. Was there truly no alternative but to consummate the union in such a setting? Lutz said what happened was merely a side effect of my separation from the almoner. Now, let us be on our way. Hiniel thinks the Empire of Traikas. Dia said, your highness, you'll catch a chill. Allow me to close the window. Hiniel said, oh yes. Thank you. Let's think, what was that peculiar sensation? Once the dark energy takes hold, I am reduced to a creature of raw, unrefined instinct. Not even my own family, let alone any woman, would dare to approach me. So to be held in another's arms, and to experience the bond of matrimony in its truest form, I had never allowed myself to entertain such notions. It seemed wiser not to grow attached, for I knew they would only come to fear me in the end. I will sire an heir purely out of obligation, but beyond that, there will be no such thing as shared conversations, no needless intimacy. No, I cannot assume that fortune will favor me again. If fate turns against me, I might very well end up tearing my wife apart with my own hands. Beyond the duty of producing an heir, there can be no such affection between us. That is the condition upon which our marriage was built. A fact I must not forget. Hiniel said, oh my, the imperial palace is truly extraordinary. Even if Sal's palace were expanded tenfold, it could never hope to compare. Hiniel thinks, what could have possessed the kingdom to provoke such a powerful nation, I wonder? Could it truly have been the rare minerals said to lie beneath Mount Newell? Mount Newell. The very place where both my child and I met our tragic end, that I conceived his child that day? Dia said, Your Highness, we will be halting the carriage for a brief moment. Is something the matter? Let's said dismiss your maid. From this point on, I will accompany you myself. She said, I'm sorry. But why? Let's said I've blamed our late return on our supposed honeymoon, so we'll need to make a convincing show upon our arrival. We must act as though we are utterly besotted with one another. Hiniel said, oh, so we'll need to put on a bit of a performance then. Let's said thanks to my rather dramatic proposal back in Sal, everyone will naturally assume that I am madly in love with you. Let us keep up appearances, at least until we've been presented to the Emperor. Hiniel said, yes, Your Highness. Let's said, and let there be no misunderstanding. Hiniel said, pardon? Let's said, this is merely an act. Do not mistake it for anything more. Hiniel replied, oh yes, of course. Hiniel thinks was it simply his good mood that led him to act so tenderly that night. Well, he did make it clear that he holds no genuine interest in me. Let's said, cover yourself with this before we proceed. Hiniel thinks a veil? She said, is this perhaps a custom of the Traika's imperial court? Women are to conceal their faces before the emperor, while men are expected to observe some other formality. Let's said, no, we can't have you present yourself in that state. Hiniel thinks covered in bruises. Let's said, the marks I am responsible for may pass unnoticed, but the rest will surely raise suspicion. Hiniel said, oh why yes, of course. Let's gave something and said, and take this. Hiniel said, what is it? Let's said, open it and see for yourself. Let's gave the necklace and said, the bruises on your neck were far too noticeable, so I had Evan procure this for you. Hiniel said, this is exquisite, Your Highness. Hiniel thinks so it's true what he said. Women do have a fondness for jewels. Let's said, try it on. Let's see if it does the job. Hiniel thinks women simply adore their jewels, so why not opt for something truly opulent? Just hand it over. Hiniel thinks, will this suffice? Let's said, indeed. Hiniel said, and shall I return it to Your Highness afterward? Let's said, what on earth for? Don't be ridiculous. Hiniel said, my apologies. Let's said, and do see that you hold your tongue once we are within the palace. I have much else to focus on besides you. The peace negotiations with Sal have been brought to a close. I present to you my wife, Princess Hiniel Viante. Hiniel said, Your Majesties, I extend my sincerest greetings. It is an honor to meet you both. The Queen thinks, why is she wearing a veil? Let's bowed and said, the veil was my doing, as my wife was much too timid to reveal herself before Your Majesties on this occasion. The Queen said, it was it? Such impropriety is entirely unbecoming of a prince. This audience was convened to formally introduce the newest member of the imperial family. How dare you insult us all so brazenly? Hiniel said, Princess, remove your veil at once. Hiniel thinks, what is this tension? They're staring at each other as if ready to draw blood. Let's said, will you be all right? Let's said, as you can see, I wasn't quite able to restrain myself in our moment of passion. I ask that you permit my wife to remain veiled to spare her any further embarrassment. The king said, haha. It seems you've finally had your taste of a woman's graces. Very well. The princess may don her veil. Lutz, I have not forgotten your tireless service on the battlefield in defense of our empire. Now that you have taken a wife, it seems only fair that you finally enjoy some peace, especially as you appear to be so taken with her. Lutz bowed and said, "That is indeed my intention, your majesty. Although, if I have inherited your inclinations, one wife may not prove enough." The king said, "Heniel Viante." Heniel said, "Yes, your majesty." The king said, "Now that you have wed into the imperial family, I trust you will dedicate yourself wholeheartedly to your husband and to the prosperity of Traikas." Lutz said, addressing her by name alone is no longer appropriate. "As my wife, she is now the princess consort and a member of the imperial family. I ask that you address her as such." Heniel thinks he isn't speaking up in my defense. This is his way of countering their slight against him. Lutz was born the legitimate heir of the late empress, but when the concubine Psyche rose to power as empress, it was her sons who claimed power within the court. Now, for all his triumphs on the battlefield, the imperial family still regards him with disdain. The king said, "Your belated return, all for some jaunt with the princess consort, has caused the welcoming banquet to be delayed by a day. Such an affront to our dignitaries is unacceptable. See that you are more mindful of your conduct henceforth." Lutz thinks my mother was empress in title alone. Though my father cared only for his concubine, Psyche, she clung to the hope that by bearing me, she might win his affection, only to descend into despair once it became apparent that I bore the curse of the imperial bloodline. Consumed by longing for a love she could never attain, she slowly wasted away until death claimed her, and no sooner had my mother passed than Psyche seized the title of empress with shameless ambition. It was then that I made a vow to myself. Never would I allow myself to be undone by something so far beyond my grasp as love. Lutz shouted, "What on earth are you doing?" Heniel said, "Why, you said, we should act as though we are hopelessly in love." "I was simply following your lead." Lutz said, "Right, yes. But let it be clear. The only reason I took you in my arms that day was to ensure there would be no questions about our late arrival. They needed to believe I had lost all sense over you. Anything less would have failed." Heniel said, "I understand, your highness. It was indeed a wise course of action. I shall do my part to uphold your plan and deliver nothing less than a perfect performance." Lutz thinks right. This is all simply part of the performance, which is why there should be no harm in letting it continue. Heniel said, "A banquet, you say? But whatever will you wear?" "Well, since I'll be wearing this necklace, I'll need something to match." Dia said, "I'm afraid there wasn't much time to pack, leaving Sal as abruptly as we did, though your highness wasn't exactly spoiled for choice to begin with." This one. I think this should suit perfectly, your highness." Heniel said, "Why you expect me to wear that?" Heniel said, "Isn't this far too bold, Dia?" She said, "It complements the necklace beautifully, and your highness looks absolutely divine in it." Heniel said, "But the imperial family seemed to be dressed so modestly earlier." Dia said, "A touch of heavier makeup should hide the bruises well enough." Dia said, "And I am sure they will be dressed more lavishly for the banquet." Dia said, "This is by far the finest option, your highness. The other gowns are of fabrics much too flimsy and in such dreary shades." Heniel said, Then, I'll need something to drape over it, at the least." Heniel thinks, "Why are they all looking at me in such a manner? Is my makeup perhaps too excessive? It seems everyone is dressed quite modestly, even for such an occasion. Thank heavens I thought to bring a shawl. Where could Prince Lutz be? Is he still yet to arrive?" Prince Kylos said, "Oh dear." Heniel replied, "I and saw him wonderfully." Dia said, "Good heavens." Prince Kylos said, "My apologies. How terribly careless of me. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Prince Kylo, the third prince of Traikas." Prince Kylos said, My. I had heard women of the south were rather bold, but this is quite something. I can see why my brother chose to take you as his bride. It appears I misjudged him entirely. For one who seemed so uninterested in women, he clearly has an eye for a striking figure." Heniel thinks I cannot afford to lose my composure. Should I falter now, it will only make matters worse for Prince Lutz. I must carry myself as a princess, no, as a true princess consort would. Princess Heniel said, "It seems my unfamiliarity with the ways of the north has caused some unease. Departing so soon after the wedding has afforded me little opportunity to learn the customs of Traikas, and for that, I apologize." I ask you all for your kind understanding. And to your Majesty and your Imperial Highness, I offer my humble greetings. I hope to earn your favor and guidance as I take my place within the Imperial family. Kylo thinks so Lutz didn't choose her solely for her looks after all. And he said very well then. Do enjoy the banquet and went away and thinks I'll need to keep an eye on that one. The girls are whispering, do the ladies of the South typically dress in such a way? Well, I suppose it does suit their warmer climate, and her makeup. Is that a Southern style? How charming. Hiniel thinks it feels as though I'm on display. Surely, putting on this soiled shawl will only make me appear even more ridiculous. Should I slip away now to change into something else? Perhaps I could call for Dia to bring me another shawl. Prince Lutz thinks it appears I'm late. Where is Hiniel? Lutz said Hiniel. Princess Hiniel said, Your Highness. You're here. If I may, could I trouble you for your cloak? It's far chillier in here than I had anticipated. Let's said a word, please. What could possibly have possessed you to wear such a dress? Hiniel said, Forgive me, Your Highness. The dresses I brought from Sel were all far too light, and nothing else seemed to pair well with this necklace. I had intended to cover myself with a shawl, but then the third prince happened to spill wine all over it. I am truly sorry. I never meant to disgrace you. Lutz said I should have realized you wouldn't have the time to ready your wardrobe, given our hasty departure. It was my responsibility to ensure these matters were attended to beforehand, but amidst the chaos of your abduction, I'm afraid it slipped my mind also. Prince Lutz said the fault lies with me. I shall arrange for someone to instruct you in the customs and etiquette of the imperial court. A new wardrobe will be prepared for you as well. And, looking at it now, the dress is hardly improper. I don't see what all the fuss was about. Aren't you cold? That's simply how they dress in Sal, isn't it? Tisk, it's no great matter. Lutz said Kylo likely targeted you to insult me. Of that, I am certain. Now that you are my wife, such provocations will only continue. As I warned you previously, the title of Princess Consort does not grant you any real authority. Your time in the Imperial Court will not be an easy one. Princess Hiniel said, I am well aware, Your Highness. I always was. It was I who pleaded for Your Highness to take me as your wife. As such, I am prepared to face it all, come what may. Lutz said, then let us go back inside. Hiniel thinks Psyche, the former concubine who ousted the late empress to claim the highest seat of power. The first prince, who robbed Lutz of his birthright as crown prince. The third prince, who seized control of the court while his brother lay ill. Each of them will meet their end within the next 2 years. Hiniel said, and you, she thinks, will soon claim your place on the throne, as Emperor Lutz Viante. Lutz said, why are you looking at me like that? Hiniel said, I was merely thinking how kind it was of Your Highness to lend me your cloak. Lutz turned his head and said, kind? Don't make such a fuss. What a bold choice of dress for the evening, Hiniel. You've certainly stirred up quite the chatter. The women said, and given how thoroughly enchanted the second prince appears to be with you, I can only presume such ensembles were quite the norm for you back in K2. Lutz replied, as I have already made clear, my wife is now the princess consort and should be addressed with due respect. The woman said, I believe the marriage has yet to be ratified here in Traikas. Until it is, she cannot claim the title of princess consort under imperial law. Lutz said, and is it truly beyond the imperial family to spare even the smallest gesture of grace for one soon to join its fold? The woman said, misplaced grace leads only to ruin, my child. Lutz said, had I not shown such grace myself, several noble houses present this evening would no longer be with us, houses Holton, Feymark, and Sens. Lutz said these traitors have long funded factions that dare to rise against the throne. How are they any better than our foreign enemies, who lie in wait to bring our empire to ruin? Were it not for my sword, your majesties would not be here to rule this day. A man from behind shouted lies. Your majesty, this is nothing more than baseless slander. Was it not proven that we, too, fell victim to their schemes? The king listened silently as the man continued. We even ceded a portion of our lands to your majesty as proof of our sworn loyalty, for which you so graciously granted us pardon. And why are you raising this matter now? Lutz said your blatant disregard for my wife and her rightful station led me to wonder if you had forgotten my own. The king said I shall see that the ceremony is expedited. Let her take her place as a formal member of the imperial household thereafter. Hiniel bowed and said, thank you, your majesty. I am most honored. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I cannot help but feel as though I've only added to your burdens. Lutz said, don't be foolish. This has nothing to do with you. Even in your absence, they would have invented some other reason to come after me. If anything, I am the one who drew you into this mess. Hiniel thought his words may seem harsh, yet it's clear he means to reassure me, to remind me that this isn't my doing. Lutz said, go, get some rest. You needn't remain here and subject yourself to their drivel. Hiniel said, oh, but I'm fine. Truly, Lutz said, you've barely had a moment's rest since we set out. There's no reason for you to share in their scrutiny alongside me. Evan, escort her to my quarters at once. Evan replied, yes, Your Highness. A man said, greetings, Princess Hiniel. It is a great pleasure to meet you. I am Hakel Lex. Hiniel replied, the pleasure is mine. Lutz said, leave her be, Hakel. She's on her way to get some rest. Hakel replied, ah, so you're sending her away early to keep the wolves at bay, are you? Lutz said, watch yourself. Hakel said, forgive me. I'm afraid my boundless compassion would not see me leave a lonely soul unattended. Lutz said, why are you still standing here, Evan? Evan replied, I shall take my leave then. I look forward to our next meeting, Your Highness. Hiniel asked Sir Leneuve, was that man of the imperial bloodline? Evan said, please, Your Highness, I must ask you to lower your voice. That was Sir Hakel, the Chancellor of Triicas. Hiniel said, the Chancellor? But he appeared to be far younger than Prince Lutz. Evan said, yes, well, his wit and talents far surpass his years. Not even Prince Lutz can deny Sir Hakel's brilliance, although he often laments that the man is a complete pest. Hiniel thought, a pest. Evan smiled and asked, is the length of your cloak causing you any discomfort, Your Highness? His Highness Prince Lutz has arrived. Lutz said, leave us. Hiniel thought, what happened after I left, I wonder? He looks terribly unwell. Lutz hugged her and Hiniel said, why, Your Highness? Lutz said it was utterly intolerable. Hiniel said, pardon? Lutz said, do not wear that dress again. The way those men looked at you, it took all my strength not to pluck out their sordid eyes. Hiniel held him tightly and said, I'm sorry, Your Highness. Hiniel thought, so it seems my attire continued to spark conversation even after I left. She said, truly I am. I promise to be more careful from now on. Lutz and Hiniel kissed one another, romance blooming between them. Lutz thought, strange, today was no less wretched than any other, yet now, in her presence, it all seems so trivial. What is it about her touch that brings me such calm? This woman is my wife. She will remain by my side, rest in my arms, and one day bear my child. Hiniel said, why, Your Highness? It's time we conceive an heir. Lutz said, you want this too, don't you? Hiniel said, please, just wait. Lutz said, what is it? Hiniel said, I haven't yet had a chance to bathe. If I may, let me wash myself first, and then I shall join you in your quarters. Lutz said, we'll bathe together then. Hiniel said, that's exactly what you said last time, Your Highness. And, before I even had the chance to wash myself, you know perfectly well what happened. Lutz said, very well then. But don't keep me waiting. Hiniel pushed to leave the room and said, I'll be as quick as I possibly can. Dia said, the prince seemed terribly displeased earlier, Your Highness. Was it perhaps due to your attire at the banquet? Hiniel said, yes, I'm afraid so, Dia. I think I caused him quite a bit of trouble. Dia thought, oh dear, what if Her Highness risks falling out of favor with him? Whatever could she wear to his chambers to ease his mood? What's this? Some perfumed oil? It seems to smell of flowers. If I were to add some to Her Highness's bathwater, she would smell positively delightful. And that would surely lift the prince's spirits, wouldn't it? Dia mixed that vial with Hiniel's bathwater. What on earth is taking so long? Is she drawing her bathwater from the river itself? Dia clenched the plate and said, why, Your Highness? Lutz said, where is Hiniel? Dia said, she is still occupied with her bath. Her Highness asked for something to quench her thirst, so I was just bringing this to her. Lutz took it and said, I'll take that. Lutz said, very well then. But don't keep me waiting. Hiniel thought when Lutz said, but let it be clear. The only reason I took you in my arms that day was to ensure there would be no questions about our late arrival. After all, he said. Hiniel thought, for all he suffered through today, he never once placed the blame on me. Rather, he tried to console me, claiming the fault lay with him. He's far kinder and more attentive than I ever dared to imagine. Could it be that he feels even the slightest bit of affection for me? Maybe, just maybe, he's beginning to truly care for me, Heniel said. Dia? I was just about to step out, actually. Could you fetch me a towel? Dia. At that time Lutz arrived. Heniel said, why, Your Highness? Lutz grabbed her hand tightly. Heniel cried ah. And Lutz kissed her. Heniel thought, whatever has come over the prince? Heniel said, why, Your Highness, please? Just a moment, wait. She thought, I'm scared. Why is he acting so roughly now? He's never behaved like this before. Heniel said, see, could you perhaps be a little gentler, Your Highness? I'd prefer to move to the bed, as we did before, if we may. Lutz thought, what is she saying? I can't seem to focus at all. My vision and hearing have dulled entirely, leaving just one primal urge to sharpen with each passing moment. Heniel thought, it's this scent. With every breath I take, it feels as though my mind has been set ablaze, pushing my already heightened senses to the brink of madness. Lutz said again, say that again. Heniel said, it's quite slippery in here, and I'm a little frightened. I'd like to move to the bed. She thought, get a hold of yourself. Focus. You cannot let your instincts take over. Someone will suffer for it. Heniel said, Your Highness. Heniel said, Your Highness. Lutz picked Heniel up in her arms and carried him to the bed. Lutz grabbed her hand and started romance. Lutz said, Ugh. Heniel said, Prince Lutz. And Lutz was busy in romance. Heniel thinks his rare moments of tenderness nearly made me forget myself. The king said, Heniel Plaquet. You are to serve His Imperial Highness Prince Lutz Viante wholeheartedly. Do not forget that you are going to Triecas for the sake of peace between our two nations. Heniel thinks, yes, I must honor the crown. How foolish I was to let my heart stir, if only for a moment. And after all that happened with Chater, I mustn't allow myself any such expectations. I will bear an heir and do just that. Think of nothing else. For once my child is born, my love will be theirs entirely. Lutz kissed her. Lutz thinks I want to be gentle. At least before, I could blame it on the disruption of energy wrought by my repeated separation from the almoner. But this time, there was no such cause. Is it true, what they say of me? That I am but a raging madman, no better than a beast? Will Heniel grow to fear me too? Will she see only a repulsive monster, something to avoid at all costs? If only it could be like before. I'm sorry, Heniel. The next morning Dia said, will you be taking breakfast with Princess Heniel this morning, Your Highness? Lutz replied, yes. We'll eat together once she wakes. Lutz thinks, what might Heniel enjoy? She seemed to take a liking to the chicken last we dined. Lutz said, see that we're served a chicken dish, will you? Oh, but prepared in the Sellian fashion if they can manage it, with lighter seasoning, and bring some fresh fruit as well. They always seem to serve them with their meals in the south. Dia replied right away, Your Highness. Lutz said, she's awake? Lutz gave the glass and said, drink some water. Heniel thinks I mustn't get my hopes up. He's simply in a better mood after last night's events, nothing more. Lutz said, as to last night, Heniel said, it's quite all right, Your Highness. I understand what is expected of me. Lutz said, what? Heniel said, after your compelling show of devotion to me at the palace yesterday, it seems only fitting that we continue the charade behind closed doors, to keep up appearances, of course. Rest assured, I am under no delusions about last night. As per your conditions, I will harbor no affections beyond what is strictly necessary to bear you an heir. Lutz thinks, what cause have I for surprise? This is precisely what I asked for. I am a man who could lose all control at any given moment. After what occurred last night, this is surely how it must be. Lutz said, good, let's leave it at that then. How are you feeling? Heniel said, just fine, Your Highness, though I must apologize for keeping you waiting last night. From now on, I will ensure that I come to your quarters without delay, whenever you wish. Lutz said, whenever I wish? I'm afraid you and that child must go, Heniel. Heniel thinks I cannot afford to wait. I must give him an heir before he casts me aside, just as Chater did. Heniel replied, yes, Your Highness. I wish to bear a child as soon as possible. It is the only thing I desire. Lutz said, if that is so, then you'd best ready yourself for what lies ahead. Heniel said, I already have, Your Highness. Let's said then come to my chambers tonight. But know this, even if you tire again, I will not hold myself back. Hiniel said understood, Your Highness. And the prince Lutz stood and went. After leaving the room, Lutz held his head and said it. Servant Saoline said greetings, Your Highness. Pardon the intrusion, but I have a matter to report. Lutz said what is it? Saoline said it concerns the princess consort's bath. The maids were seen whispering as they cleared the water, and upon further inquiry, they claimed the water, indeed, Your Highness. It is known to induce rather heightened desires in men. I have never known it to be used in bathwater, but it is nonetheless a substance of ill repute and wholly unsuited for use in the imperial court. Lutz thinks forgive my boldness, but is it possible the princess consort resorted to such means in hopes of seducing you? Now that I recall, there was indeed a peculiar scent in the bath last night. Could it have been the aphrodisiac? Then it wasn't the dark energy, but that wretched concoction that stripped me of my senses. Saoline said this attempt to manipulate Your Highness's person with so vile a substance is an offense that cannot go unpunished. If I may ask, did anything untoward transpire last night? Lutz said no, nothing of the sort. Saoline said I am most relieved to hear it, Your Highness. Then, I shall leave you to your peace. Lutz said did Hiniel really use an aphrodisiac on me? For what possible reason? Was she afraid I would not take to her as eagerly as she desired? But if she truly meant to seduce me, then she succeeded, did she not? Why, then, did she regard me so coldly this morning? I just cannot make sense of her. Perhaps I ought to speak with her. Dia said Your Highness, this is simply unconscionable. However displeased the prince may have been, how could he treat you so callously? Hiniel said as I have told you, Dia, I am perfectly fine. This is simply my duty as his wife. Hiniel wrote the letter and thinks I anticipated as much, didn't I? This is, after all, exactly as I knew it would be. I should write to Mother and Mia, let them know I am well. How is Mia faring with Shater, I wonder? She must have been so alarmed to see him injured. Dia said you'll be visiting the prince's chambers again this evening, won't you, Your Highness? I'm afraid we've run out of that perfumed oil after yesterday's bath. Shall I see about procuring some more? Hiniel said perfumed oil? Why, you mean to say you poured it in my bath? All of it. Dia said well, His Highness seemed to be in such a foul mood, so I thought a pleasant scent might perhaps lift his spirits. Hiniel thinks this is the very elixir that had Shater pouncing on me like some frenzied beast, and all from a single drop. Hiniel said the entire bottle. Dia said was it quite costly? Oh dear, I am so very sorry. The scent didn't seem all that strong, so I thought, Hiniel thinks so it was the elixir's doing. That would explain why he seemed so unlike himself last night. Outside, Lutz thinks, but then, could it be, that his intentions weren't entirely the same? On the other side, Hiniel thinks I know I mustn't hope for such things, and yet, Lutz thinks she's taking longer than expected. Did my foolish remarks from this morning make her reluctant to face me? The door knocked and a voice said the princess consort has arrived, Your Highness. Lutz said send her in. Hiniel said you wished to see me, Your Highness? Lutz said first, have a seat. Lutz said to the maid I have matters to discuss with my wife in private. You may leave us. The maid bowed and said yes, Your Highness. Hiniel thinks matters to discuss. Perhaps he, too, wishes to address what happened last night. Hiniel said what is it you wish to speak of? Lutz said the food will grow cold. We can speak as we eat. Hiniel replied of course. Lutz said I heard something rather odd from one of the attendants today. Hiniel said something odd, Your Highness? Lutz said he seemed to believe an aphrodisiac was added to your bathwater. Hiniel thinks so he knows about it too. She said oh. Hiniel thinks then it must have been the elixir that influenced him after all. Hiniel said it would appear my maid made an unfortunate mistake. I only learned of this fact myself a short while ago. I sincerely apologize, Your Highness. Hiniel thinks all that chaos over a mere maid's blunder. Lutz said this is not a matter to be dismissed so lightly. The use of such a substance within the imperial palace may very well call for severe punishment. You could have been gravely injured. Hiniel said severe punishment. Hiniel thinks Dia could face punishment because of me. Hiniel said please, Your Highness, I beg your forgiveness. I am the one at fault here. If someone must be punished, let it be me instead. Lot said you would bear the consequences for your maid's transgression? Tell me, would you offer your life in exchange for hers too? Hiniel said, well, Lot said I'll let the matter rest this time, but the maid must go. I shall have a more capable attendant from the palace appointed to you. Hiniel said, you mean to say, you're dismissing Dia? Lot said clearly, she is unfit to serve a princess consort. Last night's mishap may be excusable, but who is to say what further trouble she might cause? Hiniel said she may not seem fit to you, your highness, but Dia said, your highness, you simply must taste this cake. Hiniel said, cake. From where, Dia? I had the kitchen staff set aside a piece, just for you. Hiniel thinks I'd heard the other princesses held their own gathering today. Did Dia bring me this to cheer me up, knowing I'd been left out? Dia said, go on, your highness. Do try it. Hiniel thinks she could have had this all to herself, and yet, Hiniel said, here, Dia. Let's share. Dia said, I'm sorry? Oh, your highness, I couldn't possibly. Hiniel said, nonsense. Try it. Dia thinks, oh my. It just melts in your mouth. Dia said, it's simply divine, your highness. Please, you must have a taste. Hiniel said, let's enjoy it together, Dia. Come, sit with me. Hiniel thinks Dia has been my only solace in this cold, unfamiliar place. She's more a sister to me than a maid. How could I possibly send her back to Sal on her own, after she came all this way for my sake? Hiniel said, Dia is all I have in this foreign place, your highness. She is my sole confidant. I will ensure she never causes such trouble again, so I beg of you, please grant her your pardon. Lutz thinks her sole confidant? Prince Lutz said, very well. But if she ever puts you in such a position again, I shall not turn a blind eye. Hiniel thinks for all his sternness, there is an undeniable warmth to him. Love may be too much to hope for, but perhaps we could one day become true companions in this union. The next day, Dia said, did you manage to talk things through with the prince last night, your highness? Hiniel said, last night? Yes, I believe so. Prince Lutz seems to be a truly kind man. Dia said, do you really think so? Oh, I still find myself jumping out of my skin whenever he's near. He really is quite terrifying. Hiniel thinks I'd like to find some way to repay him for his kindness in sparing Dia. But I have nothing to offer here, nor can I expect any aid from Sal. All I possess is this hazy knowledge of what lies ahead. If only there were a way for me to uncover more about what is happening back in Sal. Oh, but of course, there is. Dia said, your highness? Is something the matter? Hiniel said, Dia, bring me some fresh ink and a quill, would you? Dia replied, certainly. Hiniel thinks when Prince Lutz chose me, Mia's fate was sealed with Shater. What must her life be like now, tied to such a man? This is the same man who dared to abduct a princess consort. I can't imagine he would treat Mia kindly. In fact, she might very well be living the same nightmare I once endured. I must find a way to stop him. Hiniel thinks I have a faint recollection of how things once transpired here, but there's no guarantee they will unfold the same way now. After all, my very presence here in Triikas marks a significant change from my past life. Dia said, the ink and quill, as you requested, your highness. Hiniel said, just to my mother and Mia. I've yet to send them word since I arrived here. Dia replied, ah, of course. You and Princess Mia did grow quite close while you were in Sal. Hiniel thinks I ought to ask Mia about Sal's current state of affairs. If I can learn more about the situation there, I might be able to tell whether things will unfold as I remember, or if the future is already changing course. If there is one thing I remember all too clearly, it's the horrors I faced during my marriage to Shater. This letter could change everything for Mia, for myself, for all of us. Kylo said so. The second prince has taken to seeking out that Salian wench each night? The man said, yes, your highness. Just yesterday, the princess consort was summoned to his bedchamber yet again. Kylo said, huh? All that self-righteous pomp, only to prove himself no better than the rest of us. Well, I suppose I should pay my eldest brother a visit. He's still no better, I hear? The man said, that seems to be the case, your highness. Kylo said, that accursed fever. It's utterly wretched, isn't it? If he is to regain his health, let it be so. If death must have him, then let it come with haste. Yet here he remains, clinging to this miserable existence neither here nor there. Kylo said, ah, the poor crown prince, indeed. A maid said, the prince truly does seem to be smitten with the princess consort. There's no denying her beauty. She holds a distinct charm unlike anything found among tri-occasions. Another maid said indeed. She has such a delicate air to her, as though she could be whisked away by the lightest of breezes. Dia said ahem. A maid said Miss Dia. What a pleasure it is to see you again. Dia thinks now that word has spread of Her Highness earning the prince's favor, it appears their regard for me has shifted as well. Dia said, have you prepared the tea? The maid replied, why yes, of course, miss. I notice this is the only tea Her Highness ever takes. What kind is it, if I may ask? Dia said it's a fine tea made only from the youngest buds of the Nilnua tree. The maid said the Nilnua tree. I can't say I've ever heard of it. Dia said I'm not surprised. The tree grows only in Sal, and its tea is a luxury reserved for those of royal or noble birth. Dia said quite the rare delicacy indeed, so I'd better not catch you stealing a sip. The maid said, gee goodness, Miss Dia, I wouldn't dream of it. The maid said if I so much as touched Her Highness's tea, the prince would surely have my hands cut clean off. Dia said, oh, don't be dramatic now. I doubt he would do such a thing. The maid said you only say that because you've yet to witness his true temper, Miss Dia. Well then, good day. Dia thinks terrifying as he may be, could he truly be such a cruel man? He shows no such harshness toward Princess Hyneal. Hyneal thinks now, what significant events took place in the empire around this time? Oh, Hyneal said of course. The crown prince's passing. She thinks in my previous life, the crown prince's death marked the beginning of a fierce succession struggle. There is no guarantee that things will unfold as they once did, of course, but should the battle for the throne come to pass, I must help Prince Lutz emerge the victor in whatever way I can. No, simply helping him may not be enough. It might serve better to strike at his rivals instead. After all, the third prince is not above resorting to the most despicable of measures to seize the crown. Though Prince Lutz triumphed before, I remember all too well the damage wrought by Prince Kylo in the process. This time, I must find a way to mitigate his toll. A knock came at the door. Hyneal replied, come in. Dia said, Your Highness, I've brought your Nilnua tea. Were you writing another letter? Hyneal said, oh no, I was just mulling over a few things. Hyneal said, thank you, Dia. That will be all for now. I'll call for you should I need anything else. Dia said, of course. Hyneal thinks how to topple the third prince. Prince Lutz must be in his study right about now. Evan knocked on the door and said, Your Highness? What brings you here at this time? Hyneal said, I've come to speak with Prince Lutz. If it's not too much trouble, would you inform him of my arrival? Evan said, certainly. Please, wait here a moment. Dia said, humph. Did he really have to shut the door? It's as though he thinks we would dare peek inside. Hyneal said, it can't be helped, Dia. They're attending to official matters right now. Even so, it all feels rather self-important, doesn't it? Dia replied, to be perfectly honest, I quite agree. Evan said, ahem. Your Highness may proceed inside alone. Hyneal thinks it's awfully dark in here for this time of day. Does he have some sort of aversion to bright spaces, I wonder? Lutz said, Hyneal. You're here. Was it really necessary to present yourself so extravagantly just for a visit to the study? Hyneal said, oh, I merely wished to look my best, knowing I was to see Your Highness. Is it not to your liking? Lutz said, what I meant to say is that you look pretty. Hyneal replied, thank you, Your Highness. I actually came because I have something to ask of you. Prince Lutz said, wait. Before we get to that, Hyneal replied, yes?